Head over to BoardGamePrices.com to find the best price on adventure games, Monochrome Inc., and thousands of other games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be cooperatively breaking into Monochrome Inc. because there's some nasty secrets in there. We're going to be hacking computers and trying to avoid the alarms. Don't want to set those off. And we're just trying to figure out what's going on in there and report back and save the day. Today we're talking about adventure games Monochrome Inc. This is for 2 to 4 players. This is sort of a choose your own adventure style adventure game from Kosmos. This is a new series of games that are separate from sort of their exit the game escape rooms. It's definitely different from that. So let me show you how this works and I'll see you on the other side. Now I'm not going to spoil anything for you in this overview. I'm just going to show you the basics of how the game works without showing you any of the secrets of the game. You could play between 1 and 4 players, and each of you is going to get one of these characters and the character standee, and you're going to start in the lobby of Monochrome Inc. Now the game starts you in the lobby, which I just showed you as A, but then there's levels B, C, and D above it. And you'll be able to take the elevator up to these different levels as well to reveal them as time goes on. There's actually 86 item cards here that you're going to possibly reveal most of these throughout the game, maybe not. And then there's some other cards I'm not going to talk about, but these are the heart of the game is going through those finding different items and doing different things with them. And there's 15 other sort of locations that you'll reveal throughout the game as well. So here you are in the Monochrome Inc. lobby, and what you're trying to do is find the nasty secrets that the story will reveal, which I'm not going to go over anything of that type. You'll have to learn on your own. Now, mechanically, the game is very simple. It's a cooperative game, and on your turn, most of the time what you're going to be doing is going to different locations, whether it's going to the elevator and revealing new locations, going in those, or interacting with the location. Now, the game itself comes with a large adventure book. And this book has tons of pages in it. And what you'll be doing is you'll be interacting with these different locations like 107, 102, 105, or things like that. And you'll be reading certain instances from that book and learning and maybe possibly finding items and things like that. Now you might notice that there's different sort of icons on some of these. And that means that there's certain people that when they go there, it's not great for them. Because each character starts with a handicap. So this says begin card with 49. Here's 49. And this is a handicap is their voice recognition. So anytime this character explores a location with this sort of voice recognition, it's going to raise the alarm level by 1. Now that, in addition to that, many other ways to possibly raise the alarm throughout the game. And as you do, you'd raise this up. And once it gets to 5, you would read this entry in the book. And then I won't tell you what happens after that, but that's sort of how alarms work. And so this character is not going to want to explore 104 or 105 because it would make the alarm go up 1. So there are different things that you're trying to avoid with different characters, and it makes some interesting decisions about who's going to be in what room, who's going to look after what, things like that. So again, on your turn, most of the time you're going to be moving to a room, revealing a room, or looking at something in a room, reading something. But once you have items, you can combine items with locations. You can combine items with other items. And to show you how that sort of item combining works is, now I'm just showing you this from the rulebook because these cards don't even exist, so this can't be spoiling anything. But if you had a can of cat food and a can opener, you could put these together and look up number 1011. You always go the lower number first and the second number. So you'd look up 1011 in the book, and maybe it would say, hey, you found a can of food. Put these items away, get them out of the game, and then pick up item 12, and then you'd have an open can of dog food. And then maybe you'd want to use that can of dog food with this location. And then you'd say, oh, well, here, I'll do 12104. And I'd look that up in the book and see if it does something. So that's pretty much how you mix items with items and items with locations. That's mostly what you're doing throughout the game, other than just going to locations, learning, and trying to formulate what you're going to do next. Now there is an app that's not out yet while I'm reviewing this, but it's supposed to actually, you type in the number and then it just reads it to you. And that's going to be better than going through the book because sometimes you can look for the book for a number and realize it's not there and realize, oh, that item, is not going to be used with a location or something like that. Mechanically, that's as simple as it gets. You're just trying to explore the story, find items, find new locations, follow the story, and get to the end. Now, the game is set up into 3 chapters. And each chapter is about an hour long. And at the end of that, it gives you a bag. You can kind of save what everybody has, what items and things like that. But I find it most fun to kind of go through all 3 of them together because the story just kind of continues with itself. So it takes about 3 hours to go through the entire game. Now the book itself actually has hints for locations, items, and it's very helpful. There's no penalty for taking hints because a lot of times you're probably going to need them. And it's a nice way that it works really well. It talks about which items, you can look up a specific item number, it tells you what to do, what you might want to combine it with, where you can find something. And sure, it's giving you some of the answers, but sometimes you'll be stuck and you'll need to use it. Also, at the end of the game, you're going to get certain points depending on how you've done, and essentially just trying to get the most points you possibly can. All right, well, there is my non-spoiler overview of the adventure games series. In this case, Monochrome Inc. specifically. Now, let me talk about the things I liked about this first. First of all, I love cooperative games. I love choose-your-own-adventure books and games. And this is basically that. It's a cooperative choose-your-own-adventure game. And I really like the way that this worked. And let me go down the reasons why. Now, first of all, let me talk about give you some frames of reference here possibly over the last couple of years, and what it's not. It's not an escape room for sure, because you're not destroying things. It's not all about these little intricate puzzles and trying to figure out things like that. It's nothing like that. But what it is like, earlier this year and last year, Van Ryder Games came out with a thing called graphic adventure novels. And these are essentially, these books that you would mostly solo play and read sort of like a comic book, but then choose your way to go, like the old style choose your own adventure books. Where when I was a kid, I used to read those all the time. They almost didn't even have any pictures in them back then. It was just like, hey, you come up to a swamp. Do you go to page 35 if you want to go in a swamp or not? And you'd do that. But the graphic adventure novels was just much more immersive because you're reading a comic book, but you're trying to go through things. But then they also came up with a cooperative version called Crusoe Crew earlier this year, which took that to the next level. And Z-Man Games has also sort of re-released some games in this lineup of Choose Your Own Adventure games, where they took books that actually was out in the 80s, I believe, that were Choose Your Own Adventure books. One of them I had actually reviewed, and you would kind of play through that as almost like a game, even though it's not really a book at that point. But this takes that idea to the next level. It essentially builds on all of those that I just mentioned, but then makes it more of a game. So let's talk about the handicap. So it's a cool thing that in this game, each character has a handicap that if they look at that type of location, it's going to raise the alarm, which you don't want to do. And essentially it alters your decisions. It's like, oh, we're in this room together. Well, you know what? Why don't you go there and I'll go here, and because neither of us can do those ones, then we'll figure out what to do from there else. And it kind of it makes the decision making somewhat easier, but at the same time more interesting. I like that some of the locations they change the outcome depending on the character. So sometimes you'll look at something and it'll say, hey, if you're this person, read this. If you're this person, read this. If you're this person, read that. And none of them are hugely different as to what actually will happen. Sometimes it is, but it gives you a different flavor from that person's perspective. So you start to learn what the characters are, what they're not, what they're like, and things like that. And I like that aspect of it. Sometimes you'll go to a location and you're like, oh, that location's now. I don't even want to tell you that. I don't want to spoil anything. So I don't want to go too far down to the technicalities of this. Now, another thing I like is combining items with each other and other locations. It's just fun. Sometimes things totally make sense. It's like, oh, well, duh, let's put this item with this item. Sure, now we have this. Well, what are we going to do with it now? I don't know. Can we combine it with another item, or can we, is there anything that we could do with this yet? No? Well, let's just keep our eyes open. When we see new things, maybe we'll think about where to make it. And I think that's cool. It's really fun to kind of be clever like that. The game makes you feel clever in that regard. Although sometimes you'll end up putting together items that might not at first appear to make sense, but because of what you're trying to do with it, it does make sense. And sometimes you're gonna need hints to do that. More on that later. This felt, my favorite thing about this is it really feels like the old style adventure computer games. When I was a kid, back in, I think it was the 80s when this came out, it was called Maniac Mansion. It was sort of this adventure game, much like this, where you're moving around the different characters, you're going to different spots, you're searching, you're looking at locations, you're finding items, you're combining items with the locations, just like that. And another one, like Adventure of Monkey Island. 2 adventure computer games when I was a kid that I loved, and that literally takes that experience and puts it into a board game. And I really love that about this. I liked taking notes for later exploration, because it does tell you should take notes, but there's certain things you're going to learn that you're going to want to come back to. Oh, remember that before talked about this. Now that we found this, let's go back and try this over there. And that's really fun. Saving's easy. It does suggest that you take sort of a picture of where everything is, but if you just stack everything neatly in the right spot, it's easy. Now, it did say that, it does have 3 chapters, as I mentioned, and it did say that on the box it was 90 minutes per chapter. And most of the time, when publishers are not accurate on the time, they're usually trying to say it's shorter than it is. In this case, they're trying to say it's longer than it is. Now, it's possible that each one could take your group 90 minutes if you play with the full player count and you all really deliberate and talk a lot. But I found it to be much shorter than that. Mine was about an hour each time, actually a little bit less than an hour, about 60 minutes, then 50, then 45. So it took me about between 2.5 to 3 hours to finish all 3 of them, and I played it straight through all the way. But I still felt like, man, this was so much fun, totally worth the money. I know you can't really kind of replay it as much, more about that in just a moment, but it was definitely worth what it was, and the value on this is huge. So this, to me, if I could describe it to you, it's like those graphic novel adventures, those Z-Man Choose Your Own Adventure games that they just came out with, and Unlocked, which is a sort of an escape room game from Space Cowboys. Because Unlocked, you're taking cards and adding them together and trying to come up with another number. And that was the part I liked about the Unlocked series, but I didn't really like anything else about it. Where this takes that idea and puts it into another world that is much more immersive and so much fun to just explore. I like that the game has different endings and different outcomes depending on your choices at the end. And they don't really affect your score too much. They can, but they don't really that much anyway. But depending on where you go and what you have, you can take different paths towards the end. And I think that's a really cool thing. For me, that scoring aspect, it's cool. I scored a 91, which says very good, but there was still plenty to explore when I was finished. Now, most people, or some people, might want to go through and play it again. Now, you know the arc of the story, and you know all the main things, so some people might not want to do that. Others might want to do that, because they might be like, oh, what did I forget? Me, as a reviewer, I was just super curious, so when I got to the end, I looked at all the items I didn't really use. I looked up the hints on those at the end to see what they would do, because I really wanted to get this out quickly to you because it's coming out soon. I didn't want to play through it a bunch of times, so I played through it once, and then I went back and looked at the things that I didn't use and how would I have used them and things like that. There was definitely a lot I could have done, and some items I didn't even find. So you probably could play this more than once. I don't think it would be as interesting the second time through or third time, but you definitely can play it if you want to. Anything negative about the game? Sure, some minor things. The elevator mechanism is sort of wonky. I think, it's like, oh, you can call an elevator on your turn, and you can move into the elevator. Then you can move the elevator up to a floor. Then you can reveal a new floor, or you can go to a location. Why not just say you can just move the elevators around and move? It's in this game, maybe in others it will change, but in this one it was like, even if you're taking different elevators to different spots, you can still basically move from one location to any other location in the game. Just move your character there. Who cares about really moving the thing? Now, sometimes you'll want to stay in the elevator, and yes, that can affect some decisions. I'm not going to spoil anything else in this one. So it can affect it, but in the grand scheme of things, the elevator mechanism, it didn't really need to be there. It's just like, just go to the place you want to go, share those elevators. But anyway, minor thing. 2, another wonky thing is sort of passing cards when you're on the same level is a little wonky. It's like, oh, you can exchange cards with anyone in your on your level, and then you can do your action, and then you can swap them again. And it's like, well, and sometimes you have a lot of items, so sometimes it's like, well, if we're on the same items, same floor, let's just do what we got to do. We'll all each use each other's items, instead of like passing the cards back and forth, because that gets a little wonky sometimes. So that, again, some of the mechanisms sort of get in the way a little bit, but not really. It's almost like they're there for a reason. I get it, but in the same time, you don't really have to like use them. It's like, oh, we're on the same level. I'll use that item that's yours. We'll use this item that's theirs. Don't worry about passing the cards back and forth. So it can be you can just kind of shortcut a lot of the mechanisms in the game, I think. Number 2, this is my biggest one. There's a helper app from Kosmos, and I downloaded it, and it did not yet have this, and I understand because the game's not out yet. It's not there, but you're supposed to be able to type in numbers, and then it will read things to you. Well, using the book, I had to use the book because the app wasn't out, and when you use the book to look up numbers, it definitely causes you to see other things by accident, or know which combinations are or are not possible. Like, if I have an item, and I'm trying to combine it with a location, when I look for that number in the back of the book, If I don't see something that starts with those first 2 digits, I know for a fact that that item is not going to be used at a location. But which means it's probably used with another item, or vice versa. And it really gave some of the things away which I did not like. Sometimes you'd look and you'd see the number that you have, the first 2 digits, but not the other ones, but you can't help but see what numbers follow that because you're looking for that. You're like, oh, this doesn't work in room 401, but it worked in room 601. I haven't even found that yet, and you've kind of spoiled a little bit for me. This was my biggest problem with the game, but I'm sure that's going to be fixed when the app comes out. So I highly, highly, highly recommend play this game with the app. Hopefully they update it soon. Now, this one again about playing it again. Likely this is one that I won't want to play it again. As I mentioned earlier, some people will, some people won't. You can play it again, which is positive, but the negative is you probably likely won't want to because you know the story and this and that. But again, some of you might want, you might want to try to play it again just to get a better score. And that's possible, and you can do that. And if that might be you, like, yeah, I'll do that. Cool, then you'll get multiple plays out of this. For me, I'm more likely to play through the whole thing, look at my score, look at what I didn't do, and then just work backwards and go, well, what would I have done with this? What could I have seen? What things didn't I see? And then look it up and go, well, where would I have found this? And I would have liked to backwards calculate things and just see what would have happened, things like that. So yes, play it once through, and then for me, the exploration of what I missed and what I would have done is just as fun as playing through it again. I'd probably just want to see what I missed and go, oh yeah, as opposed to going through it and possibly even missing it again. So you can play it again, but likely you probably won't want to. The last thing in this negative is on the box, there's no sort of difficulty level like the exit games. And I assume there's going to come out with a lot more of these. And it'd be nice to know how difficult is this. This one, it wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. The first chapter was somewhat easy. The second chapter got really hard. And the third one was harder than the first, but not as hard as the second. And I would like to know, the dungeon is the other one. And I'd like to know, is this one harder than the dungeon or not? So I'd like them to have some sort of difficulty like the exit games. The hint book is so great. I did have to use it multiple times because we were just completely stuck. And some things are like, oh, duh, why didn't I think of that? Other things are like, wow, I wouldn't have thought about that, but that's really clever. I wish I had. And so the hint system here is very good. But I wish it would have had difficulty levels so we can kind of start comparing and contrasting these as they come, new ones come out. So that's it. The adventure game system as a whole, I love this version. This Monochrome Inc. was awesome. I cannot wait to play the dungeon one. I can't wait to play more of them. I'm sort of sick of the escape room games in general. When they first came out, every single one I wanted to play, all different types, and I loved them, and then it got really crowded. And now it's just like, nah, I'm over it. A new exit game, a new escape room game, not necessarily exit. Exit, by the way, is one of my favorites, if not my favorite version of the escape room games. But I'm sort of over the escape room games, kind of like how I'm over Roll and Writes, where it's like, hey, they were hot for a while, now there's just too many of them, and I'm just over them. Same thing with the escape room games. This is a new genre that I feel as excited about as I did about the escape room games, and I'm hoping that this doesn't get too crowded either. I hope it's still just a few here and there that are just really, really fun. So overall, I loved it. This is definitely something you should check out if you like any of that adventure style, choose your adventure style, cooperative adventures. This has been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships through board games by helping you on the next one you'll love. Did you miss the Game Topper 2.0 Kickstarter? Have no fear, it's not too late to get in on the ultimate gaming accessory. Convert your table into a high-quality gaming table with a fully portable Game Topper system and take advantage of some of the best 3mm premium gaming mats in the industry. New styles, new sizes, and new accessories can be yours. Upgrade every game you play by late backing now at GameToppersLLC.com.